the situation shifted pretty decisively on one particular date, which was October 25th, 2012, when we published an article by David Barbosa about the wealth of the family of Wen Jiabao, who was then in his final couple of months as China's prime minister. And for me anyway, that particular story, or more pointedly the Chinese reaction to that particular story, upended every assumption that I had had about the direction that we were moving in terms of China's treatment of the foreign media. Where we go from here is kind of hard to tell. We've had a lot of dialogue with the Chinese government in the aftermath of that story, and my feeling is that the attitude has hardened quite a bit. There's been no sort of sign of understanding or no clear indication that there's a desire to move on and sort of resume business as usual. We've had constant problems with visas, intensifying even problems with visas. We had a sort of little mini drama at the end of last year where we were somewhat publicly threatened with sort of having no visas for any of our resident correspondents, which would have meant, kind of 8 or 9 people needing to leave at the end of the year. None of it was said formally, but nobody was getting their visa, and we had people having to change and cancel their end of the year vacation plans, and it was, after the intervention of Joe Biden that everybody got their visas. Whether they would have gotten them anyway, we don't really know, but it wasn't looking very good at the time. Since then, even the sort of routine temporary visas that we applied for and got for correspondents outside of China who came in for very specific reporting purposes or business meetings or auto shows or stuff that rarely results in what the Chinese see as objectionable coverage, have also been withheld. Nick Kristof recently was supposed to be on a panel for the World Economic Forum and had official invitation letter and no real other reporting targets while he was in China, and he was denied a visa. Our business correspondents in Hong Kong are now pretty systematically denied visas, so we don't really see the situation as softening up or improving. I do think there is some, kind of glass half full, or at least a quarter full kind of a version of what's happening, in that the red line coverage of the wealth of the senior party elite in China, that line is being crossed by Xi Jinping, right? Fairly routinely now with very widespread crackdown on corruption. The foreign ministry doesn't thank Bloomberg or the New York Times for helping put that on the agenda, but the truth is that the issue is not as verboten as it seemed to be previously, when the top leader, perhaps in the course of consolidating power, perhaps because he actually cares about the issue, I don't know, but is investigating and exposing wealth accumulation by the families of the military elite and the political elite. So at some point, I think time, could be a little bit helpful in softening the Chinese impression of what that sort of coverage amounts to. I also think, like all stories, these stories sort of play themselves out. They have a life cycle. The sort of investigative reporting about holdings of relatives of members of the Politburo Standing Committee, are not going to be endlessly interesting to the outside world. There may still be some stories, but it's not going to be the New York Times's or anybody else's sole line of coverage in a place as big as important as China. So the passage of time could help a little bit to sort of diversify the image that the official side in China has of the Western press. So those are sort of the macro factors that are out there. In terms of the more specific things that we as a company can do, or we as a collective Western media can do, I mean, I think the simple answer is not a heck of a lot. You know, we've gotten very specific roadmap from the Chinese side as to what it would take to unblock our website and resume issuance of visas as usual, and it comes down to don't publish stories that we think are offensive, and you have to agree to do that in writing, which we're not going to do. You know, we're not, the New York Times is not a very big company anymore. It's dependent pretty much entirely on the journalism that we do. We don't have any other source of revenue, and the moment that we even wink and nod that we're going to avoid a certain category of coverage or type of reporting in a place like China, you know, I'm not sure what value our brand has. So that's not an option for us, and we've told them that.